I've always had an interest in the German invasion of Russia, and I thought I'd do a little yap today, a little show and tell of one of my favorite items in my German collection, and it's a Crimea Shield, as you can see, or Crimea Shield. It's just a sheet metal badge in a bronze finish, and as you can see, it has the Wehrmacht eagle on the top, the dates 1941 and 42, and a map of the peninsula of Crimea. And Krim is the German version of Crimea. It has the 4 prongs in the back. This would have originally had been worn on the sleeve of a tunic or greatcoat, left sleeve, and it would have originally come with a cloth backing in whatever color that the recipient served in, so kind of gray and green for Army, blue for Navy, dark blue, or blue for Air Force, I should say. Navy would have had dark blue or whatever. It would have gone through the cloth. There would have been a backing plate, a metal backing plate, and the prongs would have gone through that and then bent back to keep it all in place, and then they would have had a paper or cloth backing glued onto the very back to protect the again, some catching on the prongs, and that would have been sewn onto the tunic sleeve. And about 100,000 of these were issued to soldiers, mostly from the 11th Army. But each soldier would have had about 3 to 5 of these issued, depending on how many tunics and greatcoats and everything else they would have had. Over time, with uniforms being damaged or whatever, replaced, the cloth backings would have disappeared, and they would have just ended up sticking this onto the sleeve by itself, just the metal shield. And I've seen plenty of photographs on the internet of soldiers wearing just the shield on their tunics, with the backing having been removed. With the backing, these are about 170, 180 pounds, maybe $220 thereabouts. Because it doesn't have the backing, I got mine for half of that price. I'm pretty happy with it. And it's worn. There is some signs of wear and tear to it. I like my badges, my awards to have been worn. I like to have wear and tear on them. I don't like pristine badges. I don't like them boxed or in paper envelopes and things like that. That doesn't do anything for me. All my badges that I've got have wear and tear to them. They have been worn in the past. So there you have it. As you can see, it has that nice bronze wash to it. And these were instigated in late July 1942. And they were issued to commemorate the Crimea campaign, which kind of lasted from late September 1941 through to early July 1942. And to receive one of these badges and these awards, you had to be in the Crimea region for at least 3 months, or you would have had to take part in one major engagement in that region or be wounded in that region. And these were issued to soldiers, Air Force, and Navy. Because it doesn't have the backing, I have no idea who this what service the soldier had belonged to, but more likely Army. There were more of these issued to the Army, so quite a common badge and not that rare. As I say, about 100,000 were issued to soldiers, and because they were issued more than one, there's up to maybe 300,000 or more of these made in total during the war. This is a original one. I got this through my dealer, but these are being extensively copied by, I suppose, faked. You could say these are faked by some people nowadays. But there you have it. But as I say, it commemorates the Crimea campaign, which is one of my interests in the Second World War. And I've got a newspaper cutting here, which has a map of the region. This is a map cut out of a German newspaper from late 1941, which I picked up from a dealer some years ago. and it's quite interesting. It has a couple of a few towns and marks, so possibly somebody at home was keeping an eye on the locations of maybe a son in the army or something like that, or maybe somebody in the region was keeping an eye on where he had been. But whatever, Odessa's marked down, as you can see in a couple of other places here. Anyhow, this is the Ukraine region, and that region here from basically just above Kiev, which is there, down to the Crimea, was part of Army Group South. And they were composed of the 1st Panzer Group, and they were mostly motorized, and also 2 SS motorized divisions in that. The 6th Army, and they were made up of about, I think, 14 divisions. 17th Army, which had, I think, 13 divisions. And lastly, the 11th Army, which were based down here and which did most of the fighting in the Crimea. And the 11th Army were composed of 12 divisions, 7 German and 5 Romanians. So, as I say, quite an interesting part of the war. Commenced in late June when the Germans invaded Army Group South under the command of Field Marshal von Rundstedt, were based down here. 6th Army and 1st Panzers went through Kiev. They occupied Kiev, I think, in late September, and then the 1st Panzer Group went on down to Rostov, which they occupied in November of 1941. Rostov would have been about down here somewhere. The 6th Army followed the 1st Panzer Group, and they ended up splitting about here, and they took Charkov in late October 41, and also Stalino, which is here. And then they moved on to Stalingrad, which is about here, I suppose, on the map. And of course, we all know what happened to the 6th Army in Stalingrad in 1942 and early 43. 17th Army were down here somewhere, and they took the central Ukraine region. They also fought in the Uman pocket, which was a Soviet pocket, and they was surrounded by the Germans. And along with the 11th Army, they fought the Soviets in Uman, which is there, and took that over. The 11th Army started off in Romania, and they came through over Odessa. Kashishruv is in modern-day Moldova. That's Romania here. So this is the Ukraine here. There's Minsk there, which is Belarus. There's Moscow up there. There's Tula. Tula is had been the big Soviet army arsenal. By December 1941, the German army had just gotten to the edges of Moscow, just about 20 miles from Moscow. They nearly got Tula, and then they went down here. Instead of going into Moscow, unfortunately, Hitler decided to go into the south here, into the Caucasus, and try to get the oil fields, which were about here, I suppose. And the Caucasus would have been about here, further down a little bit. Anyhow, the 11th Army ended up in the peninsula of Crimea, and they reached that, I think, in late September. Odessa was finally taken in October 41. It was bypassed mostly by the army, and then fighting took place there. But anyhow, they got to the Crimea, and they fought their way through to Sevastopol, which is down there. So, and the 11th Army, I think, was commanded by Field Marshal von Manstein. And Sevastopol, the garrison there, was surrounded by the Germans, and they held out all the way through to late June 1942. There's Kutsk, I think it's pronounced, where the Russians supplied the garrison down here. There was intensive fighting throughout the peninsula here, throughout the winter and spring and early summer of 1941 through to 42. Quite intensive, hard fighting. hence the shield being issued to the troops. So much fighting, in fact, that the 11th Army was basically worn out. It lost quite a lot of men and materials. So by the end of the battle, the 11th Army was kind of split between the 17th Army, and the remainder was sent up north to Leningrad to serve in the Leningrad front. So it basically disappeared more or less. 6th Army, as I say, went on to Stalingrad and got defeated there. There's Kursk there, here, that had major fighting in 1943. There's Minsk there. So quite a lot of history in that small area. Moscow to Crimea, that's about 800 miles. So quite a large region there. So that's why I've always been interested in that history. It's just very fascinating. So I was very happy to get my badge here. So enough of my yapping. If you have any questions about that, anything you want to add to that, just drop me a line down below. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed that little yap, and bye for now.